What is happening, guys? ChrisMNTG here, and today I am bringing you Xander Pero's 3rd place Philadelphia ZoroGarbBanette Garb deck list. I am going to basically say how cool this deck list is. It's heavy teched out for the wide range of matchups that he had to go against over this past weekend. And basically I'm going to explain the individual card choices, why I believe he played them, and basically why you should consider it going forward as an option for yourself, or at least be aware of it going into your next event. So starting off, he is of course playing Zoroark GX. Not going to go into too much detail with this card. It's just always going to be relevant in any format that it is in rotation for, basically. It's only going to be not relevant when it rotates. Draw 2 cards and ride a speeding for 120. But that's not the end of the story, because Zoroark has started incorporating a lot of damage modifiers into it to make that 120 into 130, for example, which means you're smacking over Baby Buzzwole, Shining Lugias, stuff like that, which makes Buzzwole a lot less of a threat because its bulk is the thing that makes it a real headache for the Zoroark deck. So you've got 130, this will go into 160 with choice bands, and then finally 180 maximum cap with Professor Kukui. That means you're knocking out stuff like Rayquaza, Tapu Lele, Tapu Bulu. It's a really strong sort of combo, I guess. Just allows Zoroark's weakness was obviously hitting the high numbers, so incorporating tags allow you to hit those high numbers is obviously a really good move. He's playing a lot of attack Pokemon. We'll start off with the Tapu Lele. This card has seen play in a couple of Zoroark decks, not because of Magic Swap, sadly, although having it as an option I'm sure is a good thing when it comes up. But it is there for Psywave. It does 20 times each energy on your opponent's active Pokemon. So this is against Rayquaza. Rayquaza absolutely needs 3 energy to do anything relevant. It's not attacking you if it doesn't have 3 energy. So Psywave does 60 damage base, 90 of a choice band, 180 because of weakness. So Tapu Lele is a 1 prize, 1 energy attacker against that deck, which obviously just swings momentum heavily into your favour. Another tech he is playing is the BB Buzzwole Sledgehammer. We all know how good this is, even if Sledgehammer never hits 120 due to how quote-unquote easy it is to play around. The threat of Baby Buzzwole being there just forces your opponent to play a lot more different than they usually would. So just having the card in your deck list just presents that to your opponent. Of course, you could maybe play only 1 prize attackers until your opponent goes down to 4, but that means you're not playing up Zoroark, which means, you know, it's not as good. Or maybe if you get sort of fast enough, they sort of have to knock out only GXs. That means Sledgehammer does become really good. And of course, the epitome of 1 prize attackers is Tapu Koko. Just having the free retreat is insanely good as the Guzma pivot. But Flying Flip is also a damage modifier of sorts. 20 to each of your opponent's Pokemon, so it softens up a lot of Pokemon you usually couldn't hit. For example, Lycanroc, doing the Flying Flip and then going into the Kukui, the Choice Band, the Devour Plains combo means you can knock out Lycanrocs, which is just really good. And you're probably wondering why you can play stuff like Tapu Lele and Buzzwole in the same deck. It's because of this card, or at least the cards you play for this card. Banette GX, once per turn before you attack, if this Pokemon is your active Pokemon, you may move 1 damage counter from one of your Pokemon, or one Pokemon to another. You can move it between players, so if you have a damage counter on one of your Pokemon, you can give it to your opponent, which means that you can play the Rainbow Energy, which is just really good. I can't get the Rainbow Energy up right now, but Rainbow Energy, that's why you can play the Buzzwole and the Lele in the same deck. Even though you could play Unit Energy, but you couldn't play Unit Energy to have Garbodor available, and of course Banette's Shadow Chant, which is a really solid attack. And this attack does 10 more damage for each supporter in your discard, but it has a maximum of 130 altogether. So yeah, it can knock out Baby Buzzwole, obviously because of weakness anyway, but it doesn't need that many supporters. It can knock out Shining Lugias. It's just a really solid 1 energy attack. but the thing that seals this card for me is the Tomb Hunt GX. It is the Sidgey's Hollow Hunt. Put 3 cards from your discard pile into your hand. That is just so good, because with puzzles gone, Zoroark decks have really lacked that way of recovering cards outside of Pal Pad and Stretcher. No way to get back items. So Tomb Hunt GX just allows you to get them back, and of course adding back items really dampens down your opponent's trash avalanches. So Banette GX is just a really solid card to have as an option. And then 2 Tapu Lele GX, I think 2 is correct, because it's usually only there just for your opening supporter, and then you have the other copy later down the line to find like endgame Guzmas or to get you out of very sticky situations. And then for the last Pokemon, he is playing a 1/1 line of Garbodor. Trash Lance just forces your opponent to play around it, even if you never even hit anything relevant for Trash Lance. It just forces your opponent to hold on to their items, which obviously benefits you. It means they're not committing stuff like Choice Band, any of their ball cards. So even the threat of just benching Trubbish just makes your opponent go, oh, I have to really manage my item count here. Which just is really good because you're knocking them into Rattles Beacons every single turn. So that is just a really solid way of setting up to really restrict your opponent. So that's the Pokemon. We're going to go into the items now. We have 4 Nest Balls, sorry. So that's obviously really good. You can search it off the Apricot Maker to get yourself started, but opening as many of these turn 1 just to get down like a Banette, a couple of Zorus, and then maybe Trubbish in the matchups that Trashalanch is just godly. So having Nest Ball is just really good, really consistency. 1 Stretcher, you hold on to this for dear life, but obviously if needs be you can add back another Zoroark if you have a Zuria benched, or a Tapu Lele to get you the supporter. So Stretcher is just an incredibly versatile card. 2 Timer Ball, I think 2 is correct, although personally I love 3 because I seem to always miss Timer Ball. But again, searchable off the Apricot Maker, which gives the Apricot Maker that flexibility of both a turn 1 and beyond supporter, which is obviously really good. Just means it's not dead, or at least very rarely, because I can add, of course, Ultra Ball at any time during the game, so that's it just gives that card a lot of versatility. Then, of course, the 4 Ultra Ball, that's really standard in near enough every deck list. The 3 Devoured Plains, this is just a bump Shrine to keep Shrine off the board, but also it is a damage modifier, so you don't just go wacky and just place it down ASAP. You hold it for when the time is right, but having 3 copies of it just allows you to see it consistently, allows you to see it without having to dig too deep with Zoroark. So Devoured Field at 3 makes sense. The 2 Acerola, because this card is godly in the Zoroark Mirror matches. Basically, you Acerola up there 120 you've been hit with from the Zoroark, and then you hit into yours, and then it's just basically about whoever Acerolas the most. But because of Rainbow Energy in this deck, Acerola is pretty much always live, so Acerola 2 is definitely a solid pick. Then, of course, the 1 Apricot Maker. I personally like it at more than 1, but yeah, it's mostly get the Nest Balls turn 1, but of course if you do whiff it turn 1, it's fine, because then after it becomes Timer Balls or Ultra Balls. 3 Cynthia, probably you're thinking, oh, you don't need to draw a supporter because you've got Zoroark set up, but that's not the case, because you have to play around stuff like Marshadow, around stuff like Judge. So Cynthia just is an out to those situations, and of course if you're just want to really fuel your hand up and you don't really have anything in your hand you really want to discard, Cynthia can find you 6 new cards to trade away. Then we're playing 3 copies of Guzma. Again, I personally like more copies because I always feel that you need more, but you're playing stuff like Pal Pad and Tomb Hunt GX, so 3 does make sense. It's obviously a fantastic card. We all know how good Guzma is. Late game Guzma, or you have to draw on the Guzma to win. Yeah, Guzma's fantastic, especially with Tapu Koko as a pivot. The 1 Judge, you only play 1 because it very rarely comes up. It is in that sort of little pocket of space when Judge really shines, and that is why you play it to have it as an option. If you go first, in the Zorg mirror, you set up all your Zoruyas, your opponent does the same, onto you, maybe slap down a Zorg and judge your opponent. It just means they're going to have a hard time finding their outs in the Zorg and stuff. And of course, against stuff like Algorithm GX, or when your opponent does do stuff like Tomb Hunt, having the judge as an option is a really solid pick. And then we are playing 2 Lily. Sometimes when you open the Ultra Ball and you already have like a lot of nest balls, or you don't have a turn 2 supporter, Lily is the more correct play, just to set yourself up and basically play from turn 2 onwards. So that's why he's playing 2 of them. And the one Luzamine, we were actually playing this for the League Cup over the weekend. It's actually really good, adding back either 2 supporter or a stadium and a supporter, or 2 Devour planes if that comes up. But it is just a really good way of recycling your stuff, gives you longevity, especially in the mirror, and of course it gives you more outs to the shrine, because if they don't play Luzamine, you win out the Stadium War by adding back 2 Devour planes, which is just really good. Then 1 Mallow to search your combo pieces of Zoroark. I wouldn't play more than 1 in a... This deck's not really combo heavy, but it does have combos, so 1 Mallow is definitely correct. 1 Professor Kukui. I'm not sure why you only played 1. Maybe the 180 combo doesn't come up enough because of stuff like Trashalanche or Bayonets, but I do like 2 Professor Kukui just to have more outs, the sort of Rayquaza, Bulu, stuff like that. But 1's fine, especially with Luzamine and Tomb Hunt. Then 2 copies of Choice Band, same again, would prefer more, but I guess just having the Tomb Hunt GX just allows you to play less ratios of important cards, because everything's like hyper recyclable. So 2 copies of Choice Band, and the Spice is Weakness Policy. Just swings the Shrine matchup in your favour, because even if you have to walk into Sledgehammer turn, just nothing you can do about it. But when you do, at least if you have like a Zoroark in the active with Weakness Policy, and maybe have no real good targets in the bench, your opponent has to really waste their Sledgehammer turn on just hitting for that 120, 140, 170 at the max. So Weakness Policy is just really good. It really does do well in that matchup. And if you slap it onto a Bayonet GX, it means your opponent's Zoroarks are having a hard time knocking it out, because they obviously don't have to worry about weakness. So Weakness Policy is a really strong pick in this deck, especially when people aren't opting to play Field Blower like at all, because they only think of it as an out to stadiums, not as an out to tools. So Weakness Policy usually stays on for a very long time, so that's why he's playing 2. And lastly, for the energy, we have 4 copies of DCA, really standard in a Zoroark deck, and as I was mentioning earlier, 3 Rainbow Energy, because Bayonet GX takes away the cost, so to speak, of the damage counter, and it just allows your deck to have that toolbox feel of having loads of problem solving, 1 price Pokemon, 1 energy, 1 price Pokemon, so having a Rainbow Energy is good. And lastly, the 1 Psychic Energy, I really like this. It just means you don't lose to stuff like Enhanced Hammer, Circuitry, I guess, but mostly Enhanced Hammer, so it means you can slap this onto a Trashalanche. It means your opponent has to knock it out. They can't just, Enhanced Hammer disarm it. Or same with the Bayonet GX, they have to out it, not just disarming it. So that's the deck, guys. I hope I've done the explanation some justice. If Xander watches this video, doubtful, but hey. Please leave a like, guys. Comments what you think of the deck. Maybe Xander will be able to answer it. If he makes a post on Heyfonte, I'll link it in the description. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed the deck, guys. Comment, rate, subscribe. Check